John Ulzheimer is known as one of our nation's most recognized credit experts. Having worked for 28 years in the credit industry, John has become one of the most prolific speakers about credit and the go-to authority on answers to credit-related questions. Credit Countdown with John Ulzheimer.
Hello, my name is John Ulzheimer. I am a consumer credit expert. I've been in the credit industry for almost 30 years. Spent some time at Equifax, which is one of the credit reporting agencies, and FICO, which is the company that designed and developed the FICO credit scoring system. Today we're going to talk about a consumer protection statute or law that was designed to help protect consumers called the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. If any law ever needed an acronym, it was the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. So thankfully, we just refer to it as the Fdcpa. So whenever you hear Fdcpa, they're referring to the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, which has been around since 1977. So it's been around for a while. The Fdcpa was designed to essentially set the rules and guidelines for how third-party debt collectors or collection agencies have to act when they are attempting to collect debts from debtor consumers. Like if you have collections on your credit reports, you probably know exactly to what I am referring. So let's talk about the Fdcpa, what it covers, some of the do's and don'ts as per the Fdcpa. So the Fdcpa covers third-party debt collectors. And so these are the companies that their sole purpose for existing is to attempt to collect debts on behalf of other companies. And so, for example, if you have an apartment lease with ABC Apartment Complex and you default on your apartment lease, well, then they, of course, can hire a third-party debt collector to track you down and attempt to collect whatever amount that you owe them per the lease. And that is generally done through telephone calls, letters, and credit reporting. So that's an example of what a third-party debt collector is and what a third-party collector does. None of that stuff that I've just said is illegal. As long as you follow the rules of the Fdcpa, attempting to collect debt is perfectly legal, and frankly, it's healthy to the consumer credit environment because people should pay what they owe, and people who provide services should get paid for those services. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. The Fdcpa only covers protections for consumer debts. So if you have a business debt that a collector is attempting to come after, that's different, okay? So we're just talking consumer debts. So apartment leases, deficiency balances on hard assets, defaulted credit card bills, medical collections, meaning that you have a service with some sort of a medical provider and you're not able to pay them, and so they come after you. Those are all consumer debts, and so that's what the Fdcpa covers, is protecting consumers, not businesses, from debt collectors. So let's talk about some of the rules as it pertains to the Fdcpa, and this is where we're going to start getting into the what's allowed and what's not allowed, because it's interesting. For every what is allowed, there's a lot of examples of the same thing that's not allowed. So mail. So one of the questions is, well, can a debt collector contact and communicate to you through the U.S. mail system? Absolutely, of course they can. In fact, debt collectors commonly send out collection letters, which is why they need to know what your current address is. If you've ever heard the term skip tracing, that's one of the purposes of skip tracing, is to try to locate a consumer and to get accurate and up-to-date contact information, including an address for that particular consumer, so they can send you letters in the mail to attempt to collect a debt. So that is allowed. What is not allowed as it pertains to mail is to have anything printed on the outside of the envelope that indicates that it's from a debt collector. And so in other words, postcards is a good example. They can't send you a postcard because obviously it's not covered in an envelope, and you could clearly see that it's a communication from a debt collection company. So that's some of the differentiation between what's allowed vis-a-vis the mail system. Number two, the Mini Miranda. So I'm sure if any of you have watched police shows or crime documentaries, you've heard of the Miranda warning. That's you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be held against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney, blah, blah, blah. That's called the Miranda warning. Well, there's a similar disclosure that's required in the world of third-party debt collectors. It's commonly referred to as the Mini Miranda. And the Mini Miranda is a requirement for the third-party debt collector to clearly identify themselves. And so a debt collector can't call you and to pretend to be your grandmother. They can't call you and pretend to be someone from your school trying to find lost alumni. They have to clearly identify who they are. Hi, this is David calling from ABC Collection Company. Any discussion we have will be used in an attempt to collect a debt. So there's a certain required disclosure that they have to give, and it's commonly referred to as the Mini Miranda. Credit reporting agency credit reporting of third-party collections. Third-party collectors report collection accounts. Very important to make that distinction. Collection accounts. There's a certain standard that has to be followed when reporting collection accounts to the credit reporting agencies. First off, is it allowed? 100%, absolutely allowed. Reporting collection accounts has been allowed in the credit environment for many, many decades. We're talking way into the prior century, so that's a non-issue, all right? And it never has been an issue. Of course, what they report has to be correct, but credit reporting as a practice is certainly not something that's restricted even by the Fdcpa. Credit reporting of a collection has to follow certain rules, of course. You have to report accurate information. You can't report balances that are wrong. Once it's been paid, you have to update it. And that's actually kind of a hybrid of FCRA requirement as well. You absolutely, as a debt collector, cannot be abusive. I can't believe I have to even tell you that. But you can't be abusive. You can't threaten physical violence of a debtor. You can't threaten to arrest them. You can't threaten to get them fired. You can't take to social media and start talking about how horrible of a consumer they are just because they're not paying their debts. You cannot do any of that stuff, okay? You cannot be abusive. As a debt collectors commonly sue the debtors. And that's one of the ways they collect debts, is they sue them, they get judgments, they can garnish wages. These are all methods used to collect debts. You cannot threaten to sue somebody unless you intend to do so. So you can't just say, you know what, just threaten to sue them and see if that gets them to pay. Can't do that. Now, if you intend to sue them, you can certainly bring up the fact that you intend to sue them. So if you are a consumer and you get a threat from a debt collector that they're planning on suing you, assuming they're following the rules of the Fdcpa, you better take it seriously, okay? And then finally, this is a good one. They cannot contact you outside of the hours of 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. And you notice I didn't put Eastern, Pacific, Central, Mountain, none of that stuff, because that doesn't matter. It's wherever you live is what's relevant. So if you live on the East Coast, and just because the debt collector is on the West Coast and there's a 3-hour difference, they still cannot contact you outside the hours of 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. your time, not their time. So that's some of the rules as it pertains to the Fdcpa and collection accounts. Hopefully none of this stuff is ever relevant to you because you never have collections. You don't have to worry about this stuff. But to the extent that you do, here are some of the rights that you enjoy and why you enjoy them. So if you have any comments, leave them in the section below. Thank you for watching. We'll talk again soon.
For more videos and credit tips from John Ulzheimer, go to www.tradelinesupply.com.